with your guest host, Brendan Lewis. And today in the studio, I have two awesome agents, and I want to introduce them. The first is Grecia Garza, and she is with Rogers Healy. And the second is Norma Johnson, and she's also with Rogers Healy. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about your brokerage that you guys are at.
Yeah. So I think Norma and I have both been there for 6 years.
Going on 6 years.
Yes.
Yep.
She joined probably a few months before I did. But it's a very energetic firm. We're a boutique firm, I would say.
Yes. I love it because, well, I've been in real estate for a really long time.
How long? How long is a really long time?
A long time.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
I don't know what it's going to age me completely. So,
Okay.
I'm going to say more than 10 years. So, the firms that I've been at before were very different, which nothing wrong with very traditional.
Yeah.
But this is not, and it's just very refreshing.
Well, I was reading, actually, I did some research, and I found a D Magazine article that was a couple years old, but it probably rings true still. And
Was it the one with the selfie?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And
yeah, that's a good one.
So it says, Rogers Healy, rising star in Dallas real estate, and billboards. And it says, he says his tagline is real estate with personality, meaning his personality in a super competitive market. He has positioned himself as the anti-realtor, the antithesis of the stereotypical middle-aged go-getter. At 6'5", the spiky-haired Healy looks more like a pro athlete or television star.
Oh, gosh. Of course, they wrote that. Yeah.
Did he write that, or did they write that?
Yeah, exactly. He wrote it in, user submitted. No. So, yeah, I mean, we definitely do go against the whole realtor stereotypes in terms of, no big egos. So there's absolutely no drama in our office. And
how do you create that culture? I mean, how do you have he's obviously at the helm, but how do you really you don't know if somebody's going to be, full of drama until you have them there.
Well, I think it's because if you do bring drama to the office, you're gone. Right. There's no tolerance for it. And so we really create a culture of, we help family, we help each other out in terms of if it's a new agent, with contracts, if it's a seasoned agent, talking about our hip pocket listings or maybe issues that we're having throughout transactions. And, you don't feel this sense of competition. I mean, at some level there is, because we are, in a sense, competitors, but it's very much
competition with camaraderie.
Correct. Yeah.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you get that from the very get-go. The second that you join this brokerage, you'll notice from the start of with the trainings that they offer. And when you start to go to the trainings, you'll kind of notice immediately the vibe of what the office is going to be, the energy of the people that you're going to be surrounded by. And you'll notice immediately that everybody's there to help you, to help one another, and motivate you. And it's extremely motivating. And it's very, very different than a lot of places where you're just basically thrown out to fend for yourself and you figure it out. Yeah. And here it is, it's very there's a lot of values that, kind of Rogers brings to the table too. And he speaks about it, and you can be a part of it or you can't or whatever. But I think that the ones that, are really not meant to be a part of the office right away, you can tell. I mean, they're gone. So.
And so and you've been there about 6 years as well.
Right.
Grecia. And so were you at a brokerage previous to that? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was at another small brokerage before that.
Okay.
And I actually got my license in college. So I worked for another broker there, just kind of shadowing for about 2 years, and then moved over to Dallas, and was helping the other broker with marketing and social media and training for the agents. And I just realized, I'm goodness, in terms of real estate, it really has to be your own itself. You have to push yourself to do it. Otherwise, the business isn't going to come to you. You have to go out and find it. And so when I was training these agents that maybe the drive wasn't there, I'm gosh, I could just do this myself full time. So that's when I made the leap over to Rogers. And What was really cool is we both started. We were like at 50 agents.
Yes. The office was small.
Yeah,
It was
back then it was
very
like
small.
You've got
50,
over
60
200
agents.
now.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I think we're like
Right about.
180 or
Okay.
so.
Those 20 troublemakers got
Yeah.
kicked to the
Booted.
curb.
But yeah, we started when it was a small firm, or and it was like there's a group of us, and we were, just like attached at the hip. We're actually all going to lunch in a few weeks.
Yeah.
With Rogers, it's like 5 girls in Rogers, and just kind of talk about like how we've grown and how our markets are so different, but we're all still so close.
Right.
It's really cool.
It's really cool because we kind of call ourselves like the OGs of Rogers Healy.
Yeah,
because
literally.
We have been there from the get go, and now he does have a couple of agents that have been there from like day one
Right.
and are still with him.
And
are
you
still
have
part of
you
the
just
company.
moved, right? To a new office.
We did.
Right.
It's located where?
So we're right off Knox in 75.
Okay.
It's like in Uptown.
Yeah.
And it's so nice because you can just hop on 75. You can
Very centrally located.
Yeah.
totally like get on the tollway. Like you're super close to Park City, super close to M Streets. I mean, it's great.
Right. I live in Frisco, but I love the office because it kind of gets me out of Frisco, but it also makes me work in other areas, and I just don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to specialize in one area. So I'm able to go to Dallas. I'm able to go to and work in Park Cities and do stuff all over. So it just keeps it exciting, and it
Another
keeps
little
it,
home base.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the office set up to it's kind of like Google ish in terms of like open desks.
Right.
Like there's a few like tenured agents, and we have like our assigned areas, but the rest of the areas are just kind of free for all. So you come in and it's kind of like a common think space,
Collaborative, yeah. Like a WeWork or something.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like kind of in a kitchen setting, and you can get coffee and snacks, whatever. I mean, we have a bevy, which is like the sparkling machine water. We like love that.
You know
yeah.
what? It's a really good, it's good energy, and there's a lot of really exciting things that are coming in the future. And so it's just I enjoy coming to the office. Let's just put it that way. Like I really enjoy when we have specific trainings, and there's always a time where if I'm able to make it, I go because the trainings are really great.
How often do you guys do trainings?
They're every week.
Well, I think they've kind of now it's I think twice a month.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because the every week I think was getting overwhelming
Right.
for everyone. But they're either led by Rogers or led by some of us, like the top producers there. So it's like, you're not just.
What are some of the latest topics that you've been going over?
Today they taught
Contracts.
how to write a winning contract.
Right.
So like if you're in multiple offer situation, like what you can write, like what are the top things that you can, convey to your buyers or your sellers in terms of like spotting a good contract or writing a good contract. So
And I tell you what, with the amount of new realtors that are trying to get into the business, it's crucial because
That's what makes a difference, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
It's going to make you stand apart. It's going to show your clients that you know what you're doing.
Right.
Even as experienced agents and tenured agents, I personally still feel like I learn something new every single time because it's changing. The contracts change, markets are changing, so trends change. So it's really, it's super important to make those classes if at all possible. So the fact that they're offered in our office for free is huge.
Yeah,
So-
and then they're also live streamed. We live stream them like
Yeah.
via our I think it's is it Facebook?
Facebook Live.
Yeah, via Facebook Live, and then they're put into like our Drive system. So it's like if you're at home, like I always tell like if someone's like help like any of the new girls like helping me or whatever, I always say like, look, if you've got some free time, like I highly suggest you like at night
To go back.
go home,
and
watch some YouTube videos, like, and then you can even start writing your sample contracts, like as you're
Right.
watching the
It's
classes.
great practice for
Yeah.
new agents.
It really is. The last thing you want to do is have your first client write have to write a contract and you don't know how to write a contract,
Right.
and you're freaking out. It's 10
Stumbling through the
o'clock.
process, yeah.
Calling everyone you know, and it's like you have to be respectful of other people's times.
Yep.
It's like having that as a resource is, I think, really good. So yeah, lots of energy in our office, like big on culture, and just being respectful to one another.
Right.
It sounds like a awesome working environment. We will take a short break, and when we come back, we will talk about kind of market report and some trends that we are seeing.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Working Title Show with Brendan Lewis. the Working Title Show with your guest host, Brendan Lewis, and we still have Grecia and Norma here in the studio. Thanks for sticking around.
Of course.
Let's talk about I want to get to a market report kind of trends thing, but let's talk about specialties, kind of maybe do you have an area that you specialize in or a particular product or?
Okay. So I think going with what we were talking about earlier in terms of being non-traditional, like it's really taught from the beginning to not have like niche markets.
Just right.
And I think that some agents look at us kind of funny when we talk about that. Yeah. But we really like to serve our clients like anywhere they are, whether they're in Fort Worth or they're in Uptown or Park Cities or Frisco,
Prosper,
McKinney.
Salina. I mean, DFW is so broad that there's so many different areas. It's almost, you kind of are just doing yourself such a
disservice.
If you don't, because there's just so much growth and there's a lot of relocation and there's just a lot of building still going on.
Yeah.
It's so great to just really be on top of.
Do you get any pushback from people saying, well, where's your office or where are you, when it comes to listing something that's maybe out of your area or out of
no.
Well,
here, I don't.
From other agents, of course, you know, because the agents are kind of like annoyed in a sense. Right. But here's the thing is, along with working all these different areas, you have to be cognizant of like making sure to do your research.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
All of those neighborhoods. So I know for a fact, like I've had an opportunity to list something like in Salina and I handed it over to another agent because I'm like, look, like it's going to be a disservice for you. Now, if I find that I can do it because I know the area really well, then absolutely I'll do it. But if it's like totally outside of my scope, then I'll just refer it out.
Stuff because maybe you get something and then it's in your area.
We've talked about it.
Yeah. We've discussed it. We've discussed, doing stuff together and kind of maybe teaming up and we just have such good back and forth. We have really similar personalities, but we also are very we're very career driven and we kind of know what our end goals we want to achieve are. And so we both are very much about getting to that.
Yeah.
So that's what makes us and we're also super close.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really, really good stuff. We're also very strong personalities.
Yeah.
So we haven't actually done it. I know. What? Yeah. But I think that
if the opportunity arose, we definitely do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've talked about like going after business together.
Right.
I don't think it's a bad idea, but we just haven't gone around to it.
But I mean, back to I think that also it's great to learn areas because it's
Step
super
outside of your
beneficial.
comfort zone.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh my God, totally.
When somebody asks you about it, then you know what you're talking about.
Right.
And so you kind of, you're going to definitely stand out at that point too, because you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's more important at Rogers Healy to instill in the age, with the agents that it's more important to be knowledgeable about the process and about contracts and about all the things that are much more important maybe than necessarily like where you're going to focus or where you're going to.
Right. Of course.
Because I think a lot of times, I've seen agents over the years, not even in Dallas, but in other places I've lived, where they might know an area really well, but they don't know how to write a good contract or they don't know how to set themselves apart.
No, well, honestly, it's great to be both. You almost have to
ideally,
do. You almost have to, it's work. You have to put the work into it, but it is just key to know your comps, know your trends, know the market. But on top of that, also know
your
everything
stuff.
else on top of, because then, so with all the other stuff, you're dealing with your clients, right? You're dealing with the person that you're trying to work with. When the contracts come to play, then that's actually putting you on the table with all the other agents. So they're going to know right away if you know what you're doing or you don't.
Yeah,
because of how you present your contract.
Well, and just for example, like not even a month ago, I sold a condo and the other agent sent me a 1-to-4 resale contract, which for the non-real estate listeners, it's essentially a single family contract versus a contract for a condo. And so right off the bat, I'm like, oh goodness, like I'm going to have to walk, hold her hand the whole way. And, we're nice about it
and
in the sense that
you were the listing agent.
I was the listing agent.
That's not uncommon though, because you get people who are dealing with buyers and they're probably a little bit more green, and so they might do things like that. And you do have to walk those agents
Right.
through
And
it sometimes, but-
us, being nice, like, I'm like, look, I'm going to retype the contract for you on the right forms, we'll get it done. But it's like, then you get some agents that they only sell single family. They've never sold condos, and then they are a disservice to their client by
Right.
not representing them correctly. So it's like, if you don't know how to represent someone, then pass it along,
Right.
and people ask us all the time also if we do commercial real estate, and I think we both have done it,
Right.
but I do recognize that there are some deals that are above my head, so
Yeah.
we'll just refer them to our commercial team.
Yeah.
Like if it's just too big of a deal, or I'm just like, I'm not experienced enough, we'll gladly refer it.
That's important to know when to pass off the,
Right.
It's
Oh,
kind of like
100%.
how to know when to do something yourself and when to pay somebody to do it.
Right.
It's sort of that kind of situation
Right.
where
Totally.
it's like
Yeah.
you need to know what's in your
100%.
wheelhouse. And,
Well,
yeah.
at the end of the day, you're protecting your clients.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
if they're friends of yours or they were referred to you, like you want them to be represented properly. And if you feel like you can't, then refer it out.
Right.
So do as much business as you can.
Yeah,
But
but,
if you
when you get to
can't-
that point, I mean, it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Eventually you're going to have to say, you know what? I'm going to just,
Pass this off to somebody who's
I have somebody that's going to take care of you, and
Right.
it's going to be handled in a timely manner. So,
All right. Well, we mentioned market trends and some market report. What do we have? What do we have to share, ladies?
Yeah, I mean, the market's still really good in terms of buying and selling. It definitely has softened, at least like in the Dallas area, like central Dallas, in terms of like, we're not seeing as many multiple offer situations.
Right.
You are seeing them under 400,000. Those are still very much
Right.
very common. But I think what's happened is there's a lot of inventory now, and flippers came along like 2-3 years ago.
Right.
And the reason that a lot of things are on the market, it's not because it's not a good market, but it's because the quality of stuff isn't as great because there's so much being thrown up.
Yeah, everybody was buying investment properties. Everybody all of a
Yeah.
sudden decided that they wanted to be the new.
HGTV,
Yeah.
Joanna
Jeff
Chip.
Lewis.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
exactly.
Correct.
I did that actually, but all of mine sold, and and now they're selling for much higher than what I sold them
But
for,
right.
which
here's the thing, like,
disappoints me. but-
if you've
Yeah.
got good contractors
Yeah.
and you know how to do it and you've got good people, like, great. But
Yeah.
it's like,
That's the
Everybody
most
thinks that they
important
can
thing.
people
do
go,
it. and,
right.
Yeah,
I
that's
can
another
install
show.
a,
Oh, gosh.
I can install a countertop.
Yeah.
Bam, crooked.
Or they just
Like,
don't know they don't know how to focus on those details, like you were saying, or they don't
Right.
know how to necessarily even what looks good or what is going to
No,
what's saleable or what's,
absolutely.
and then that maybe even including the help or the feedback of an agent who would be able to say, oh, this is what's on trend, this is what
Right.
sells, this is what's going to make the
Right.
Right.
So
So yeah, I mean, overall, still really good market. I mean, we have a ton of relocation coming.
you
Right.
still think that the relocation is
Oh my God.
It is.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, up in Collin County, it's still super busy. You have a ton of headquarters that are, right at Legacy and surrounding areas. So you have a lot of the folks that are still moving into town, and they're taking a little bit longer because they're kind of figuring out where they want to be. And so, but it's great to kind of, hopefully get in contact with some of those folks and try to help them and guide them. And you have families moving to town, you have young professionals, you have just a little bit of everything. So
Right.
it's really great because it helps all of DFW. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's just not just families that are moving here or like executives. I mean, it's everybody.
And there's a tremendous amount of development going on up there.
Yes,
And it's
still.
only going to get, I mean, there's
Still.
several other phases to the
Yes.
to the star and to
Yep.
there's a lot going on.
Crazy. Actually, which is crazy, up in Collin County, now there's going to be high rises, which
Yeah.
has
Right
never
next to
been
the
like,
Star, there's
yeah.
gonna be two.
There's Legacy
Yeah.
West that you have Windrose Tower,
Yep.
and then the one at the Star.
And they're going to be condos.
yeah,
I think.
which is
instead-
I
which
mean
is
I
great.
think it's great. A lot of people are kind of like
Well, people are
not
going to
sure.
They're going to everybody
Yeah.
has
Right.
Everyone has it.
Well, and a lot of people who already live up here are very used to just like, your single family
Right.
and your
Traditional.
right. But I think it's exciting.
It is
Sure.
exciting. Yeah. All right, well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some. These ladies are going to give us some advice for buyers and sellers. This is the Working Title Show with your guest host, Brendan Lewis, and we'll be back in a bit. back. Working Title Show guest host Brendan Lewis, and we are here with Grecia and Norma still. Grecia also goes by Gigi.
Yes.
So we were going to talk about some advice for sellers, advice for buyers.
Totally.
Let's start with sellers.
We actually were just discussing this, and just a few things that we actually talk to our sellers before getting a house listed. Some important things, key things to go through your house. And we have found lately that obviously updates are big. Mm-hmm. People sometimes think they go too much into detail, but honestly, like kitchen redos, remodels, updates, bathrooms, floors, paint.
I think a good starting point before we get into that is before you list your house, maybe go to some open houses in your neighborhood.
It's a great idea.
Like, see what else is around you that's selling, because if there's properties that are selling around you that aren't updated and they're still going for high dollar because people want to come in and flip them or whatever,
Then there may not be a need, yeah.
save yourself the time,
Right.
and just say, you know what, I've lived in the house for 40 years. I'm going to walk away with equity. But if you find yourself being the only one that still looks like 1992, then let's go ahead and replace.
Which was not 40 years ago.
Then let's go ahead and replace those carpets. Like, let's take down the rose petal wallpaper. And you know what I mean? Like,
Change the pink tile in the bathroom.
Correct.
But it's important, I think, for people maybe not to just run out and do this themselves, right? Like they should.
Totally.
Oh,
So
gosh,
do you
yeah.
find that people like already have started the process of remodeling before they've engaged your services, and then you're like, oh,
Yes.
but I would change this.
it does happen. And at that point, then you really just have to sell what's given to you.
Right.
If you can't make a simple modification. But sometimes it's as simple as decluttering your closets. Like Marie Kondo? Like Marie Kondo,
yeah. She organizes
she
basically
declutters everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix or something.
Yeah.
That
Right.
show? Yeah.
She really she's like, if it doesn't spark joy, then get rid of
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
it's like, some people just have things like their garages are filled to the brim
Right.
of things that they haven't seen in years. Like decluttering, doing a garage
Is
sale.
depersonalizing something that we do still?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I always told my
100%.
clients to do that when I was in real
Yeah.
estate. Like, get rid of all the photos of you and the kids and the grandparents and the
Well, and sometimes we say, like, you don't have to get rid of all the photos. Like, if it's a family home, I think it helps.
Right.
You know?
It just depends, but
But
staging is huge.
Staging's
We're
huge.
talking about staging because sometimes it's just helpful just to rearrange a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of furniture, maybe add a few different colors of throw pillows, just kind of zhuzh it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And both of you have impeccable style, so you can
Wow.
assist in that
We
process.
sure can. Well, and then also we have contacts, like we have staging
Right.
people that can stage it professionally, or we can bring in designers, we can bring in contractors. We can recommend them, obviously, and then if they are a match, then great. But I think those would be the top things. And then in
Absolutely.
terms of maintenance, it's like clean your gutters,
Right.
like get your HVAC serviced.
Totally. Make sure you just have your roof checked out ahead of time. Like if you know that you haven't, it's been years
Yeah.
before you had it replaced.
Get in front of the situation before it becomes a problem for inspections.
I mean, because those are going to be the things that are going to be the deal breakers.
Yeah.
Right.
Big things like that.
And for
So-
buyers, a lot of times, especially if they're first-time home buyers or they're
Right.
green, they will see them as being tremendous
Right.
problems when they might
100%.
not even be.
Yeah,
you know,
it's like a
significant.
$500 fix, and they're
Yeah.
like, my mom said I can't buy this
Right.
house.
Yeah.
No, totally.
Literally.
No.
So I would say staying ahead of the problems is
Yeah.
good. We also discuss, like, sometimes we recommend getting an inspection beforehand just to know, like, what's
Right.
going on. When you do that, you do have to disclose
Right.
everything that's on the inspection. So
Correct.
as long as you present it that way, but at that point, once you fix everything, then the inspection should be fine. The other side of it is sometimes inspectors find things that other inspectors don't find.
Right.
So
What
as
if
long as you're open.
let me ask you this. What if you have, I'm sort of playing devil's advocate here. What if you have an inspection done, you find out you've got a list of 5 or 6 things, you fix them, do you
Right.
still have to,
Disclose
Yes.
it?
Disclose.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to disclose that there is an issue, and then you have to disclose and provide invoices
Right.
of when it was fixed. So, like, you can't just fix a a pipe. Like you have to get a plumber to come and do it.
Receipts, invoices of who did it, when it was done, when it was completed. So you can have all of that to show that, it was done.
And it's a smooth transaction that way.
Right.
Otherwise, the buyers are going to think you're sketchy. The sale's not going to close. I mean, it's just about being honest mainly.
Right. So what about, so this is for sellers, advice for buyers?
Well, if
Definitely
you know,
save your cash.
If you know that you are planning on purchasing something, you want to buy whatever, small, big, whatever. I think that you kind of have to prep for it with just make sure that you're working on your credit, that you're not going out and spending a ton on your credit cards because they're going to pull your credit report.
And I think that with that, like maybe starting with a pre-approval.
A pre-approval is tremendous.
Starting with a pre-approval, because if you do have credit problems, the mortgage lender will say, hey, look, here's my credit repair person. It's going to take 4 months.
Yep.
And then once, that way you're ahead of it.
At that point, you'll be ready and good to go. Versus you're going to have to put down this amount of money and it's going to be so much harder.
Right.
So it's great because there's so many, lenders out there that are very helpful. And we work with a few of them that are great. And we highly recommend. And they're amazing at what they do because of that. They definitely get on it.
Have you seen people so they'll come back, they'll have a pre-approval, if they were to repair their credit, they could be, instead of at 200,000 or whatever, they could buy something, they could buy more. Is that something, I mean, in a 4-month time?
Typically what happens is your mortgage rate will change significantly.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes by 20s, like your score goes by 20s. That's how they like mark your rate. And so like if you go from like a 640 to like a 740 within 6 months, that can alter your rate quite a bit.
Right.
So keeping that in mind.
Not necessarily your buying power.
Correct.
But
Right.
Okay.
Now, something to know also is they'll tell you sometimes it's better to pay off a credit card that's maybe costing you, let's say you owe $6,000 and it's costing you $400 a month, let's just say. Those $400 can be applied to the mortgage than it can be to the credit card payment. And does that make sense? Like
Now
you're
it
just
increases
shuffling.
your buying
It
power,
increases
maybe.
your
Right.
buying power.
Because of the monthly
you've got-
payment you can afford,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
You're opening up you're reducing your
Debt
debts.
to credit ratio.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah. That's what I was
So
gonna
I'm not
say
a
there.
mortgage lender, so the terms are not as
I'm
clear.
not a mortgage lender either, but I love Susie Orman.
Well, and also too, though, when you get into the process, there's a lot of, I think a lot of buyers get scared, especially first-time home buyers, that they have to have a certain amount down, and that's not the case.
Misnomer? I said it's a misnomer?
Yeah. There's you don't have to have 20%. You don't have to, there's so many programs now there's options. There's a lot of options out there.
When you say programs, what are you referring to?
Like lender programs.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
loan
so, like,
programs
you can
for
do
buyers.
3%,
Right.
3.5%.
Correct.
Now with that, of course, there's going to be PMI,
Right.
et cetera. So knowing everything up front, I think is great. But no longer do you need to put 20%
Right.
down. That's kind of a thing of the past.
So what's the first step? If somebody is listening and they don't have an agent, they don't have they're totally starting from scratch, they should contact a lender?
Yes.
Or
So if they're
if they
just
don't have
starting,
an agent, maybe they should contact
Yeah,
one
they don't
of
have
you.
an agent, contact
Yeah,
us. And then we'll connect them to a lender. And then we usually try to connect them with a few so that they can identify who they like to work with.
Right.
It's a very, very intrusive process in the sense of
A lot of personal information.
Yes.
literally it's like, why did you go to Chick-fil-A 3 times this day? It's like really intense.
But you also know who you work well with, who you
Right.
can recommend, and that goes for probably any kind of trade or any kind of.
Oh,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and also there's they might feel more comfortable to get different quotes as well.
Right.
Because some lenders are going to have different quotes on their rates
Yeah.
or offer a little bit of a different program or something, and so they'll just get that vibe for them and feel whoever they're more comfortable with.
Now, another thing is a lot of buyers will go to like Rocket Mortgage or like, I guess I shouldn't name them, but like the online type.
I did the online thing and it was not a good experience.
You know,
I won't
and-
say who it was with, but it just wasn't.
It's the thing is that they are just basing your pre-approval and your rate off like a 3-question questionnaire or 3-part questionnaire. It's like,
Well, and as you get deeper into the process, the problem is that what they require of you and how you get that that information to them,
Right.
and it's like the back and forth is excruciating. I mean,
Yeah.
it winds up being, I don't know, this is probably not everybody, but it was who I dealt with for sure. And they
Right.
were a smaller company, but I liked some of the points that they had touched on in researching them. But I mean, it was a nightmare. And it was like, oh, you need to get us this, and now I need to, and with the list would just go on
Yeah.
and on and on. And it was so hard to get a hold of them, and it
Right.
was so hard, so
They
that's,
close at 5. They
Right,
are
that's
in,
the
they're
biggest
in
thing.
Virginia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're in Texas.
yeah.
So it's like sticking to someone that's local is huge.
And knows the market, knows that,
the market. That way you don't get an appraiser that's from Houston just because it's a Texas loan.
Right. Anything else?
Don't buy a car right before.
Yeah, in the process.
buy a car.
Do not go out and buy a car. Do not go and get a credit card in the process of once you've gotten approved, and if you're in the process of you've
Because
already
they will
submitted an
check
offer,
your stuff before you
it
close
will
and
all
before it gets
come
funded.
back.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
don't quit your job
No.
Yeah.
Or
the
get
day before
fired.
closing.
Or
Please.
get fired.
Has
Yes.
that happened to you?
It's
Where,
happened
Yes.
where
where
clients done,
and then they thought because they had already had the employment verification, they were good to go.
But they
they
verify
do
again.
it
Yeah.
again at underwriting, and so they'd
Right.
anyway.
well, on that note, I think we have a couple of maybe tidbits to share with our listeners. Let's start with
Okay.
Grecia. What's an interesting story or something that's happened to you in your career that you have to share, or something, a little known fact about you?
Okay, yeah. So in my career as a whole, well, I was pre-med in college. I went to TCU, go Frogs. I was pre-med. I studied neuroscience. I was so thrilled to go to med school and be a neurogastroenterologist. And now I'm here. I'm a realtor.
So how do you go from a neurogastroenterologist?
it was neuroscience in Spanish.
Okay. How do you go from pre-med to real estate?
Well, I had my license in college. I met this guy, and we're still great friends. And he essentially was like, "Your personality is totally like you have to get your real estate
Do I know
license."
who this guy is?
No.
Oh.
He lives in California or Houston now. And I'm like, "Gosh, you're nuts!" Like he was in my pre-med classes. I'm like, "What
Yeah.
are you talking about? Like not happening." Anyway, I did get my license, and when I graduated, I just did not feel it in my heart, like, or in my soul that I was supposed to go to med school. Like, I could just feel like that's not what God had for me. I was like, definitely not my vibe.
Not part of your plan.
Not part of the plan. So I moved to Dallas. I worked with that other real estate company. And then, the first few years of real estate sucked. Like, you struggle. Like,
It's
you're
hard.
like begging people
really
for
hard.
business. And my parents, of course, were not thrilled. They didn't love that I didn't go to med school because that's, my family's super conservative Latin. Like, they're like, you're either a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. Like, that's the definition of success for them. And so they're like, how dare you? We sent you to the best school that you could go to so that you could go to a great med school. So anyways, it's funny because I feel like the career really fell into my lap versus a lot of people go, I'm going to get into real estate because I have nothing else to do. But it really just fell into my lap. And I think I've like grown into it, and we like love each other mutually. It's really cool. I love what I do.
I think you're great at it.
Thank
And
you.
I'm sure your parents are very proud of you.
Well, yeah, now they
Now
are.
they are.
Yeah. For about 2 years, they were like, what are you doing?
And Norma, anything,
Gosh, well, I mean,
any experiences that
Yeah,
you may have had
you know
in
what?
your early career or?
yeah, I mean, crazy story. The very first deal that I ever did or was doing, my very first transaction ever, my client right before closing passed away. So,
We both
I mean,
gasped.
Novella gas.
no, it was awful. I mean, I was extremely nervous already as it was. My very first, I was excited. I was, this was brand new, and it was a friend at the time. It was her mom that passed, and was horrible. So I thought,
And so it didn't close.
no, no, it did not close.
Well,
That's
So-
how I've seen that happen before. That's
Yeah.
unfortunate. And it's
But yeah,
not-
very first
And your
deal.
first
So I
deal.
thought, what am I? Oh my gosh, is this like a sign of what's to come? And,
Well, clearly
know.
it wasn't a sign of what's to
No,
come
it's
because you've
not
done
at
very
all.
well. Thank you both for being on the show. It's been
Thank you for
my
having us.
Thank you
pleasure
for
to
having
have
us.
you.
This was fun.
We'll have to do it again sometime. Real quick, why don't you tell everybody how they can get a hold of you? Just your
Perfect.
name, email address, or something.
yeah. So full name is Grecia Garza. I go by Gigi. You can find me on Instagram, Gigi Dallas. It's just 2 G's and then Dallas. That's the easiest way to contact me, see my fabulous listings.
And she is very active on social media, and she's very clever about it, too.
Yes.
Thank you.
What about you?
And I'm just Norma Johnson, and also on Instagram, it's, I think, Norma Johnson Realtor. And the same, Norma at rogershealy.com. And I guess Gracie is the same. Gracie at Rogers Healy is pretty easy. So, but yeah, you can definitely check out all of our listings that we have, and open houses. Come see us, come say hi. You'll see everything on there. So
Perfect.
You'll get a gluten-free cookie.
yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the show, and we wish you continued success.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for subscribing to the podcast and listening today. I want to give a special thanks to Kensington Vanguard National Title of Texas. The show is sponsored by them, and Kensington Vanguard is a national title company with local people working here in Dallas-Fort Worth, specializing in commercial title insurance and residential title insurance. Kensington Vanguard will handle your escrow needs as well as your title insurance and your closing services. So you can go to the website at www.kv-lonestar.com to find our locations and our contact information. And we appreciate you using Kensington Vanguard National Title of Texas. We look forward to seeing you next week, where we will be talking about solar energy in the residential and commercial spaces. And we are really excited to hear about that. Something I wanted to know about, so I'm really excited to hear more about how that works. So we'll catch you next time on Working Title with Zach Sams. Thank you.
You're listening to RNCN, the digital destination for premium talk radio.